You are good to go, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Ben. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order a public hearing, 6:30 p.m. It's Monday, May 17th, 2021. Ben, you want to go ahead and call the roll for this?
Member Shroya?
Here.
Member Sharetta?
Here.
Member Revolt?
Here.
Member Peters?
Here.
Member Foltz?
Here.
Member Warren?
Here.
And Member Fonte.
Here.
7 present.
All right, thank you, Ben. All right, the purpose of this meeting is to obtain the public's input regarding ordinances 31-21, 32-21, and 33-21, which enact new regulations for 5 business zoning districts to be located along Main Street in the city of North Canton, and also adopts a map rezoning approximately 420 parcels along Main Street to the new zones. All right, so at this time, I will, Ben, if you want to take the lead on this, if we could have all the speakers that are in opposition of this zone change, we'll start there.
I did not ask.
I'll tell you what,
when
no.
they signed up.
I got you. Let's just go in the list that you have it then.
Okay. Mr. Winkart, are you with us?
I am, yes, Ben.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Winkart. My office address is 825 South Main Street in the city of North Canton. I'm speaking tonight both as an attorney for Waterside Development of Stark County Limited, which is a DeHoff Lemon entity on the east side of South Main Street, and also as a small business owner, having had an office for our law practice and real estate title company on South Main Street for the last 20 years. Also speaking this evening on this issue related to Waterside and the proposed zone change will be Robert DeHoff, the chairman of DeHoff Development Company, as well as DeHoff Realtors, and Christopher Legrand. Christopher is the senior vice president and corporate counsel for Woda Cooper Companies in Columbus. Our group recently became aware of the rezoning initiative that the city has embarked on and obtained copies of the proposed legislation that is being considered. After we reviewed it, we engaged David Hart of CT Consultants to review it with us and provide us his thoughts on what the city is proposing. Mr. Hart is recognized as one of the deans of comprehensive planning in Northeast Ohio for the last 50 years. We've included many of David Hart's thoughts and comments in our remarks tonight. Speaking personally and on behalf of my client, we certainly support good new ideas to redevelop the city of North Canton, encouraging a public-private partnership for investment in the city. We also support good Main Street zoning, as well as new residential development, which is very important for the city and also for the city school district. Every historic community would welcome the idea of a central town corridor development with old school multi-story buildings that made sense at a time when people walked most places and rode public transportation. Certainly, we believe this would be a good idea for a block or two in the area of the YMCA and City Hall, where walking distances to and from desired locations are reasonable, where permitted mixed uses and development standards are reasonable and economically feasible. Many older communities in Northeast Ohio have encouraged this type of development in, say, a third or a half mile within its central area of the city. So it seems the city of North Canton appears to have laid out a rezoning for approximately 2.5 miles of Main Street, which is 5 miles of Main Street frontage, both on the west and east side of Main Street, or approximately 26,000 lineal feet. By way of example, most people are familiar with the DeHoff building on South Main Street. This building was built over 20 years ago and stands as one of the newest multi-story buildings on Main Street. It would take the development of approximately 150 DHOF buildings along the proposed rezoning corridor, assuming it could even comply with the new zoning code, which requires a minimum building height of 31 feet. The DHOF building, by the way, doesn't comply with what you're proposing for a variety of reasons, one of which is it's not tall enough. And again, and I don't mean to overstate what's obvious to most of you, there's been one of those built in the last 20 years. It seems to us that it's unreasonable and even inconceivable to expect Main Street development to be successful along the proposed 2.5-mile stretch of Main Street. This length seems well beyond the length that could possibly contribute to a cohesive downtown area. Few, if any, cities in America could sustain that level of development, let alone North Canton. As the city is aware, Waterside has a contract to sell approximately 5 acres of its Waterside development to the WODA Group for a workforce housing development. As the city's aware, I've corresponded with the city and with the Ohio Housing Finance Agency in support of this needed residential development. The city is on record, including correspondence with OFA, opposing this development. The city's proposed zoning renders this proposed development completely unworkable and serves to rezone the Waterside parcel, depriving it of reasonable, economically viable uses. In addition to the 5-acre WODA site, Waterside would also have a 1-acre development site on South Main Street, kind of up at the street level. The proposed minimum height of 35 feet would require a 3-story building, the likes of which hasn't been built in North Canton in probably over 50 years, not one. Requiring a 3-story building on this 1-acre parcel at Waterside would render the parcel undevelopable and of little value if rezoned as the city has proposed. Further, the proposed residential over office and commercial 3-story building requirement doesn't work mathematically, let alone from an economic viability perspective, and frankly is preposterous to think about in a town like North Canton. The proposed rezoning stifles meaningful development and deprives property owners from meaningful economic viable uses of their property, dramatically adversely affecting property values. It's our belief that the proposed zoning ordinances should not be adopted as currently proposed. Thank you for allowing my remarks this evening.
Thank you, Tom.
Next is Mr. Robert DeHoff. Mr. DeHoff, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Am I on video or not? I don't need to be, so.
Welcome, Bob. Go ahead.
All right, thanks, Mark. Gentlemen, our family has been on South Main Street for almost 60 years. We had a little building with, then came Zampino's Drum Shop that has been torn down, remodeled the building next door, and then, as you know, we remodeled the historic Frank G. Hoover House, and that is Tom Winkhart's office today. And today, some almost 25 years ago, we built our current location at 821 South Main Street, a 20,000 square foot office building. When I went on the your website, there are many amendments and articles regarding these proposed zoning amendments. Tonight I'm addressing the one that the mayor signed, a zoning amendment that's dated March 11th, 2021. And when I started reading the language, the text changes, I believe that our building here at 821 South Main Street was possibly the only building built in the last, not 25 years, but built in the last 50 years, maybe outside of the YMCA, that would meet these new amendments. But on further investigation and further reading, I discovered that our building would not comply. And these are the four areas that I discovered. One was on the use. As I read the amendment signed by the mayor, in our zone on South Main Street, I think it's Zone C, our office would not be permitted, as we must have a retail establishment, a bank, or a restaurant on the first floor. We could not have our offices on the first and second floor of our building. I find that ironic. That's a polite word. In section 1136.06, the front yard setback has to be a maximum of 10 feet. Well, our building doesn't comply with that requirement. Section 1136.07, the minimum building height must be 35 feet. Our building is tall. It's a two-story building. It is not 35 feet high. And the last section that I refer to is a section 1136.08, whereas, and I'm reading this text, buildings wider than 120 feet must be designed to appear like multiple buildings not more than 60 feet wide. Well, our building certainly violates that proposed amendment. Gentlemen, I've been at this business for 50 years. We're not a big developer as developers' size goes. We really are a family, small family development company that pretty much sticks to Northeast Ohio, about a 2-hour drive from our office. We have been involved in many development projects in cities throughout Northeast Ohio. I can tell you, I personally know of no developer that has ever built a 35-foot tall building, which you're requiring, on a 1-acre parcel. And yet, that is what you're mandating by these proposed zoning amendments. I question whether this council and the leadership of this city recognizes what they're really proposing. These amendments as proposed are not, I repeat, are not in the best interest of this city today or 50 years from now. This council, this leadership has been misguided. You've been ill-advised by the very planning company you have been working with for a couple of years on these zoning amendments. I ask that the leadership take a step back, get some sound advice from other land planners. Don't take it from a developer like me, and rework these Main Street amendments. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you,
Thank you, Bob.
Next is Mr. LeGrand.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. My name is Chris LeGrand. I'm the Senior Vice President and Corporate Counsel for Woda Cooper Companies. We're based in Columbus, Ohio, but we do business throughout the state of Ohio and actually do business in about 16 states. We've developed approximately 350 affordable housing communities in our history. We have over 13,500 units of affordable housing and house approximately 30,000 residents. We're presently working to develop the parcel known as Waterside Point in the city of North Canton. The proposal is a 54-unit affordable housing complex to be developed at the approximate address of 300 Waterside Drive Southeast. The development would be jointly developed and owned by ICANN Inc., ICANN Housing, a nonprofit housing developer located and active in Stark County, Ohio. We believe that the proposal represents a rare opportunity to provide affordable workforce housing to the North Canton community. The proposal is a unique combination of a new construction, a LEED certified, environmentally friendly development of housing in a highly desirable, stable, amenity-rich community. Few affordable workforce housing communities have been developed in North Canton in recent history from our review. A location that would provide plentiful current and future employment opportunities for families that would choose to live in the property. The development proposal creates a mixed income community serving households up to 80% area median income. The location would be ideal for those just entering the workforce, small families, professionals, service industries, and other lower wage occupations. Within less than a half mile of the site are significant retail, healthcare, and restaurant business opportunities that present a vibrant and walkable lifestyle to the residents. Schools, parks, a community center, a library, and government facilities can also be found in walking distance from the proposed site. Nonprofit sponsor ICANN will assist with the delivery of family support services to the community residents. The development proposal was submitted to the Ohio Housing Finance Agency and is presently under consideration for an award of housing credits and other housing development resources. We believe that the proposal is a strong one and believe that the prospects for an award of credits and resources are positive. As has been mentioned, the subject parcel would be developed pursuant to a purchase agreement that the development parties have entered into with the current owner, Waterside Development Company of Stark County Limited. We are opposed to the proposed zoning map and zoning rule adjustments that would reclassify, 420 parcels in the North Canton Main Street area, including the proposed development site. We believe the changes resulting from the proposed map change could negatively impact the proposed housing development by limiting our ability to develop first floor units in the proposed project and by requiring that some sort of commercial office or business occupy the first floor of the proposed project. We believe that there are already many office and retail locations within the vicinity of the proposed housing development, and therefore believe that requiring that this land use be included in any development proposal would be both excessive and redundant. I'd also briefly mention that there are some density requirements in the proposed change that we think would make multifamily housing difficult to develop because the densities of our properties would typically exceed your density limitations. Our belief is that the proposed change and the application of the change to our proposed development site could be considered a violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act, given that the proposed changes occurred after our discussions with the city and city zoning officials regarding our intended development plan happened. In fact, we and the owner were provided initial review letters by your city zoning officials stating that the proposed development was essentially a by right development subject only to site plan approval and pursuant to the provisions of the current existing zoning ordinance. We believe a change in the zoning map designation and development prospects for the site would detrimentally impact the proposed development of the site as affordable mixed income housing and could be considered an attempt to prevent the development of such housing on the site and in your community. We hope that the city leadership would recognize that given the clear need for additional workforce affordable housing in the community, that any attempt to amend the zoning rules applicable to the proposed development would be and should be rejected as being contrary to the best interests of the local community and as constituting a possible violation of the Fair Housing Act. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the proposed zoning map change and the property reclassification that could affect the Waterside Point development proposal.
Thank you, Christopher.
Next is Mr. Osborne. Mr. Osborne, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can, sir.
Okay, it's hard to know where to start with this. First of all, I would say the city of North Canton is like 200 years too late in proposing such a layout and development of the city. This city was never designed for what is being proposed. We have narrow streets. We have residential that backs up to what businesses that are along Main Street. For a little history, I worked with David Hart back in 2002, nearly 20 years ago, when we passed our current zoning as chairman of Ordinance and Rules. The big proponent of this, I believe, is our current Ordinance and Rules chairman, Mr. Revolt. If our zoning is so bad for the city that we must throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, Mr. Revolt, where were you back in the 80s when you were on city council? And I know when the zoning rewrite took place back in the late 90s, it took 6 years to get our current zoning passed by council. Everyone seemed to drag their feet on it. We are not going to turn this city into a destination city. We are a bedroom community. People are not going to walk up and down Main Street here like it's Cincinnati or Columbus or Cleveland. I agree wholeheartedly with 99% of what Mr. Dehoff has spoken. This zoning that's proposed is totally unworkable for a community such as ours. And yes, it does discourage meaningful development. I'm with you. I'm sorry to say, Mr. Dehoff, though, that I am not in support of the putting housing back there on the waterside property. There were big visions that we were going to put in businesses that would bring jobs to the city, not housing. So in that one small aspect, I disagree. But Mr. Dehoff, everything you said, Mr. Winkhart, everything, a good part of what you said in support of Mr. Dehoff, this zoning is so far removed from what this city has ever had and so far removed from what it could support. This business in certain districts, you want to have development clear up to the sidewalk, no setback whatsoever. I'm going to tell you, Main Street needs to be widened, more so in some areas than in others, but the entire length of it needs to be widened. If you start building right up to the sidewalk, you are closing yourself in and you're stuck with your current width of Main Street. People are not going to walk up and down, I don't know, whatever, 5,000 feet of Main Street. It's just not going to happen. Where are they going to park their cars with no minimal zoning? Zoning that, or parking, no minimal parking requirement. The parking requirement that we have now is kind of a one-size-fits-all. If one business fails and the property has to be resold, you can pretty much guarantee you're going to have adequate parking for the next business that would have an interest to purchase that property and carry on their commercial activities. But leaving parking requirement up to whoever happens to be the first developer, and they choose little or nothing, where are people going to park? So, if there's a desire to change the zoning, have a targeted approach and tweak it. We cannot just throw out the baby with the bathwater and turn everything on its ear and start from scratch, because it's too late. This city was built and started 200 years ago. For Mr. Revolt, Mr. Ward 1 Councilman, I'm losing my memory here a little bit. You voted for the current zoning we have now. What you're pitching now is a total repudiation of what you passed in 2003, and a total repudiation for the rest of you who have been up there for a lengthy period. This is just pure insanity to just throw everything out and turn everything upside down. And some of the comments I heard at the Planning Commission meeting where you said you would review the zoning every few years. Zoning has to be rock solid. People have to be able to trust what is available today will be available in 5 years. You can't just whipsaw the community around with changes such as this. So I would throw this whole idea out, and I would like to see what Mr. Hart would like to tweak what he had drafted for us and we passed back in 2003. I don't know what we have paid Mr. The gentleman from Cincinnati. I know he has worked and created zoning for Fieldcrest, and I'll bet you we have probably expended $100,000 in land planning costs, largely unworkable. I never saw what was proposed for Fieldcrest. It's never moved forward. But I'll tell you, if it's anything like what we're seeing now proposed, this is not what North Canton can sustain, can live with, and Mr. D. Hall said it succinctly. It's unworkable for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McGregor never joined us this evening. So that is everyone.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Patrick, does administration have any comment?
I think we can go to Terry or Wayne.
All right, Terry, Wayne, which one wants to take the lead?
This is Terry Moore. I'll take the lead.
All right, thank you, Terry.
We appreciate the comments of the people that have spoken tonight. And I'm confident that those comments will be reviewed and considered as we proceed with this zoning. As I don't know if most of you know, we've been working on the zoning since 2018, have had a number of meetings with council members, with owners affected by the properties, and have had 6 council meetings to review the proposed legislation and solicit feedback. So we have tried to obtain the input from the public in general as to these proposed zoning issues. And we are attempting to do what's in the best interest of the city of North Canton and its residents. Our goal is to have the revised zoning changes positively affect the city, the property owners, and the property values to those owners within the city. We'll also streamline the regulations and simplify the process. That has been our goal all along. So with that, I would just want to conclude. Again, we appreciate your input and we will take that into consideration.
Okay, thank you, Terry. All right, we've heard from everyone. Seeing that there's no other speakers, we need to get into the next meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this public hearing.
Revolt moves.
Wait a second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. We are adjourned from the public meeting. I'm going to pause here for about 60 seconds and allow our recorder to reset and get ready for the committee of the whole. Merrill, are you set?
Give me about 10 more seconds, please.
Okay, doke.
Ready to go.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Ben, are we ready?
Yes.
All right. At this time, I'd like to call to order the North Canton Committee of the Whole meeting, Monday, May 17th, 2021. The time is 7:03 p.m. Ben, will you please call the roll?
Member Fonte?
Here.
Member Warren?
Here.
Member Foltz?
Here.
Member Peters?
Here.
Member Revolt?
Here.
Member Sreda?
Here.
And Member Shroya.
Here.
7 present.
All right. Thank you, Ben. First up is Community and Economic Development. Chairman Revolt, floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. For tonight's consideration, we have a number of, we have some changes to consider. We want to propose some additional permitted uses. Ben, do you have that particular sheet?
I'm pulling it up now.
Very good. So what we're going to do is in chapter 113605, we are going to add these particular uses to the Main Street districts, principally Main Street North Gateway. And these recommendations are from the administration and based upon a variety of inquiries it's had in recent weeks for projects. So as we try to grow our job base and capital investment, encourage capital investment, we believe that we should have some provision for those activities. Is there any discussion at this point about these additions?
No, I have nothing, Daryl.
Okay, if not, then we'll proceed to add those, and I'll make a motion here in a minute. The second thing that we'd like to do is add some additional language to allow us, we can't capture every particular use. So in consultation with Marty and with Pat, we believe that the proposed language gives us the authority to respond quickly to an opportunity and measure it against what we currently would, or what we would allow. So again, as we try to accelerate the speed of decision-making, accommodate projects, et cetera, if there's some interpretive latitude, will allow the Director of Development Services to make that decision. But if there is a dispute in that interpretation, as you'll notice in the last sentence, we do have a means of addressing that disagreement through the ZBA. Does anyone have any thoughts about that in particular? All right.
Marty has informed me that I have denoted the wrong place to insert this paragraph.
Okay, so we're going to have it in a different slot.
Marty, are you here and able to explain?
I am here and finally got my microphone unmuted here. So as I recall, we were considering removing and replacing paragraph D under section 113604. And, essentially the current language there is an exclusionary language similar to the current zoning we have, where this proposed language would give more flexibility in the zoning and help streamline the projects and a bit more consistent with the direction we're going with the zoning and the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Marty. Does anyone have any questions on that?
No.
Okay, the third item that I have is, and Ben, if you would pull up the permitted uses in 113605, we have in those uses, here you can see the additions, where they're added, etc. You've got it before you. But if you'll notice just below that under retail services, we've got hotel or motel. I would recommend that we, consistent with our discussion earlier, that we drop hotel and motel from the Main Street corridor. I think we went at some length as a result of some comments from the Planning Commission, and I think we concluded, the administration concluded, that we really at this time do not want to permit hotels or motels.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm good as well.
Okay, well, let me do this then. You have heard the recommended amendments to the current document. Let me have a motion to accept them. Is there one?
Stroya moves.
Hold seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Okay, what I'd like to do then is do a couple things. Number one is I'd like to send this back. We've made some changes. As a courtesy, send it back to the Planning Commission to see if it's got any additional comments or questions. And by the time I think it gets back to us, we'll have a copy of the transcript of tonight's meeting as well, and we can analyze that analyze the comments that were provided this evening. So we'll go ahead and tee this up. Let me ask this, do we want to give this a first reading?
Well, we're
Administration?
in committee right now.
Yes.
Okay, then let me do this. Then let me have a motion in a second to prepare a first reading of this ordinance.
Stroya moves.
Hold seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Very good. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item B. As you know, we've got this Main Street Business District existing zoning. We need to repeal that. I think and replace it with what we're discussing. by creating the new chapter 1136. Are there any questions about that repeal?
Hey,
If
Daryl,
not-
it's Dom. Daryl,
Yes.
it's Dom. So the comments that were made tonight are definitely should be in consideration with what
Sure.
they said, and I have agreements that we need flexibility. I had a couple business owners call me and just they're concerned that, you know, like let's say they have parking in the front and, you know, are they going to make them change parking to the back?
No.
So there's just some confusion with the people that it's going to be more restrictive instead of more flexible and more. I think what the goal is to make it more flexible in the sense that we're creating more of an atmosphere to generate more revenue, more opportunities for business owners, not to make it harder for the business owners.
That's correct. I think everybody needs to understand that what currently exists is grandfathered in. It's just that simple. Parking is not going to change. All right, but the question I guess at hand is, can I get a motion and a second to repeal the Main Street Business Zoning District? It was established previously and codified.
Stroya moves.
Bolt seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
For clarity, was the intent of that motion to move it out of committee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Finally, we know from hard experience, we can create a zoning district, but we need to have a map. And we have for our consideration a newly revised map that contains 379 parcels. That is the correct current number. That map reflects changes made on Portage North, west of the kindergarten center. It reflects the addition of property on Stratovan to bring it into the Main Street District, and it removes, hence dropping the number, helping drop the number from originally 429 to 379. We're removing right-of-ways from our parcel list. Administration, does that adequately sum it up?
That does.
Okay, so what we want to do then is move this legislation forward for a first reading at our next council meeting, and I'll need a motion to do that.
Stroya moves.
Bolt seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Just before we go, when will we have the transcript from the public hearing? When do we think we will have that?
Normally, they're pretty good about getting them to me within, 2 weeks for the next regular council meeting.
Okay, very good. Well, would you, if we can expedite that, it would be appreciated. And have copies distributed to the administration, council, and legal counsel.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, and I need one more motion and a second to Daryl's original, or what he was mentioning regarding the planning commission. Motion and a second to instruct council clerk to send a letter on behalf of the city inviting members of planning commission to make any final suggestions for the Main Street zoning to city council in light of the continued amendments.
I'll make that motion. Revolt will move.
Stroya second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Daryl, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is finance and property. Chairwoman Warren, the floor is yours.
Okay. We've been discussing for the past couple of weeks the two levies that we wanted to place on the ballot. And we just, as we've talked about, have been using operating dollars in place of having monies that could take care of that through levies. So at this point, we need to move it kind of to the voters and leave it up to them to say, are you in support of this or not? I know that we had put some questions on our website and left it up for individuals to either write in or for members of council to forward different questions. And I think after talking to Pat today, I know we had one that Mr. Soretta had forwarded from a constituent, and I don't think we've had many others. So at this point, I guess we just need to decide that if we're going to move it forward and let the voters see what they think in November.
Steph, I had a few questions that I had last time that I really didn't get answered. I think I had asked that, you know, it is important, of course, for us to come out, but it's important to show where have we been responsive? Where have we cut back? You know, I mean, if you know, working like I mentioned last time with different school levies, you got to show, why do we need this? Where have we cut back? I know we're looking at a strain on the general fund, but yet we go spend and increase jobs and increase different salaries and that to put the strain on that, and then we're coming here to actually get a voters to increase that. So where did we make the cutbacks to show people that we've been responsible with their money to have a levy put out there like this? That was my main question last night, and that's the one that I'm getting from a lot of different people.
Okay, Mark, this is Daryl.
I know
I'm going to answer the question in two parts. The first is this. Everyone needs to understand that the cost for personnel is governed by a collective bargaining agreement. And under the laws of the state of Ohio, it is very difficult to contain, if not impossible, to contain wage costs. The legislature posed 20 years ago a collective bargaining process that was designed to prevent public safety strikes. The price for it is a process that really places municipalities at a disadvantage at the bargaining table. That's A. Now, I won't get into a long discussion, but I will say this. In 2011, Governor John Kasich had an opportunity to reform that process. He did not. He elected to try to wipe it out, eliminate collective bargaining for public employees. So an opportunity was missed, in my opinion, to reform the bargaining process. Now, the second thing that's happened, and you ask, have we cut? The answer is, yes, we have. We've reduced the number of personnel. I don't happen to have the slide in front of us, but it was up. Ben's got it somewhere. That we've reduced the number of personnel. I think we've gone from 35 to 25. Our citizens need to understand, Mark, that when we get into the heavy lift is actually on the EMS side, but when we get into fire, all right, we are very, very fortunate right now that we have many paid volunteers, that we have not gone completely full profit like many other communities. And when that one thing happens, the costs go up. So has the situation been managed? I believe that it has. When you look at the employment numbers, when you look at the collective bargaining situation, I think it's been a fair system that's worked. It's the system we have. And I would say one more thing while I'm talking about wages. I will tell you this. If I'm having a medical emergency, I do not want an individual I'm paying $10 an hour to be sticking a needle in my arm. I think our goal is to treat our employees fairly. They do an excellent job. They need to make a living wage. They need to have good benefits. And I think all of us who sit around this council table over the last decade and all the collective bargaining agreements clearly understand the direction of those agreements have taken. The administration, and you want to ask somebody, you want to tell somebody, has done an excellent job in trying to contain healthcare costs, which are a driver. That's what we pay for in these levies, the operating costs. The administration has done a good job. So we've tried to hold the employment down. We have not gone on, certainly on the fire, gone to completely full-time professional. We have collective bargaining, which we have to honor. We've tried to control healthcare costs. But we're in an environment that is established by state law. Now, if people don't want EMS that's city operated, there are options. And I think people would find that if those options would actually be implemented, and it's very difficult to get back to a municipal system. But you can't control the cost, you truly cannot control the cost, and you can't control the quality. So let me just summarize this. Collective bargaining, we bargain within the system. We've done our level best to control healthcare costs. We've contained the number of personnel that we have, and we still deliver quality product. The question is, do you want to keep going, or do you want to move in another direction? And that's Stephanie's point. We're gonna look at the options. Here's the one we think is the best. Go on from there.
Daryl,
like
the voters will decide.
That's right. That's exactly right. And
that's exactly right. They will. Our job is to lay out the options for them.
Right.
But Mark, you ask a question. What have we done to control
everyone's
costs?
asking me. There you go.
Right.
And I have just given
to,
you the answer to that question.
I'd also like to opine here and pick up a little bit there. Daryl, where you may not have, covered, and I know any one of you, could, but so I've been involved in a principal way in 11 of the last 16 budgets that the council has passed. And, to answer the question about the heavy lift, I understand that question. I was the person asking that question when I served on city council, when the thought was, hey, let's just take it to the ballot, increase the income tax. And I said at that time, and I hold myself to that I don't believe that the city had gone through a period where they had to tighten their belts. And the first response shouldn't be to just go ask for more money. We have to tighten our belts. And we did that in those 6 years. Many of you were there from 05 to 11, Jeff and Daryl and Doug. And we worked with the administration to cut our overhead down from 120 some employees down to 92 employees. And that was looking at every line item, looking at everything and maintaining that period. Now, of course, Daryl and I left and some others of you remain. But in that period from 11 to through 16, I wasn't involved, didn't see it, and I was surprised in kind of a pleasant way when I came back in 17 and I started getting back into the budgets, that the council had done a great job from 12 through 16 of maintaining that and saying we're still at 92 employees and that we're still trying to make sure that every penny is accounted for and spent as wisely as possible with trying to satisfy the most number of people. You did a great job. 17 to the present, I would say to you, that some would say, well, I haven't heard a lot of these discussions in committee, like when the budget is up and all this, and that's when we should cut and fat. Well, I understand the role that you have, and that is why I'm, insistent on changing the process on the administrative side to bring you a budget that did not add the fat back in, and that we tried to do it, but with what we had, and we still roughly have the 92, 93 employees. Now we've changed out a lot of employees. We've swapped some in and out and tried to gain a higher quality worker. to give us more efficiencies, more bang for our buck. And I think we've been very successful in that. And that is something that we, continue to do because the council and the mayor ask more from us, and we try to do that. But at the same time, we have to look at this with open eyes and recognize that transparency. This is what it is. We're not going to balance the budget on the backs of labor. Doesn't happen. Collective bargaining doesn't make it possible. We have a very good relationship with our collective bargaining units, unlike what could occur in a lot of other communities, and they have worked with us to be reasonable. But there are other communities where they're not, and everything ends up being litigated to no end, and a lot of money spent, and the end result is you get less of what you got if you had negotiated up front, and it costs you a lot more money. And then there's a lot of ill will and a lot of low morale. I think we've changed that. I've been through a cycle now of every contract at the city, and we've negotiated them all internally. And I think if you were to talk to them, employees, I think you'd find that they feel that they didn't get everything they wanted, but that their morale has improved, their productivity has improved. I've seen it, and I think it's made a big difference. So I recognize the question. It's a great question, but I want to respond in a way that to those that wouldn't see this from the outside, that you haven't been in the shoes of the current members of council and the ones that have come before, and certainly the ones that will come after us, that a lot of the heavy work was done some time ago, but it's been maintained. It's been vigilant over that time. So I guess that's how I would address
it. Thanks.
Are there any more questions? And thank you for both of those explanations. Okay, so if there's not, then I'd like to move it out.
We have a number of
committee.
Slides prepared. I don't know if we still wish to go through them or not.
Are they the same ones that we've seen?
For the most part, yeah.
I mean, I think we've been through them twice now.
Well, if you have them handy, put them up.
Do we have those up on the city's website, Ben?
No, but they certainly can be.
I think that's a good idea.
Here.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
How about we at least go to the new proposal slide, since it has changed since the last time we had slides.
There you go.
Okay. I'm just shrinking my screen so that I can see all the words. So we would be maintaining the existing 1.5 mils of continuing levies. We, were advised by those in government, giving us some tips that these levies are subsidized by the state and they're set at 2013 land values, and we wish to maintain those indefinitely. But then in working with the county auditor, we would need to add on the fire side a 1.5 mil levy for the next 5 years. And then this would raise combined, an estimated $672,000 annually on the fire side. So we would renew and increase the EMS. We would renew the 1.5 mil EMS levy, and we would be asking for an additional 1.8 mil increase for the next 5 years. Again, they're sunset so that voters have that opportunity to review how we've done. This would raise an estimated 1.381 million annually. The existing 1.5 mils is state subsidized. So we believe that the combined total together for fire and EMS would raise the necessary funds to put the city on an even keel with the fire and EMS, and to keep the services at their current high standards. Next slide. Okay, so the current levy to the homeowner is $13 per 100,000 of value. A new levy on the fire side would cost $65 per 100,000 of value. That's an increase of $51 per $100,000 of value. So that's better than the first proposal that we looked at. It saves about $2 per 100,000. So on the EMS side, the current levies cost $67 per 100,000 of value. A new levy would cost $129 per 100. That's an increase of $62 per 100,000 of value, and that's $8 better than the previous proposal. So the total that we're asking that people would pay on a $100,000 value, the extra that they would be paying is we would add the $51 from the fire, the $62 from EMS. That's a total of $113 a year per 100,000 of value. So that works out to be, $2 a week or $2.10 a week on $100,000 of value. What does this then put us in the position to do? Do we have that on the next slide? Benjamin?
What slide are you hoping is next? Because we jumped.
Oh, I don't care. Whatever the next one is, I'll pick it up. I'll work it in. Is there a next slide?
Well, we would be going backwards because I jumped to the
end.
end.
All right. Well, never mind. What I wanted to say was that where this brings us is that, if we're able to, if the voters, realize the value here and they give us the direction that this is where the way they want to go, then, there are a lot of other things that the city would like to do, that the council would like to do, that are worthwhile, that we've been short of funds to be able to do. We know that there are many capital requirements. There's, it has been a long time since there have been significant curb and gutter projects to do. We are in constant and continual communications with the city engineer and surveying all the roads. And, he would be the first to tell you that we need to spend more on our roads. But we're all budget constrained based on this. So it has been an effort to just try to share the transparency of what do things really cost and getting feedback from the voter, the resident, on what they are willing to support. And we recognize that there's a whole campaign that will have to go with this. The first part is getting it to the ballot to let them to decide. We think that once they analyze it and get the understanding of the value that they have there and the level of service that we do, we'll go that direction. And if the voters say no, that's not the direction we want to go for a variety of reasons, then we'll have to go a different direction. But I mean, I think that we should think of it as the ultimate survey. I mean, when residents go to the ballot box to vote, I think that means a lot. And it means a lot more than can be condensed onto a survey that they get in the mail. That's a great indicator, but we'll really know the truth to that. And we know that the fire and EMS have scored traditionally, and the police too has scored traditionally very high in our surveys. But your wallet talks, and that's what we'll go to if City Council moves this forward, which we hope that they will.
Thank you, Patrick.
Hey, Patrick, this is Daryl. I don't need an elaborate, certainly a yes and no will work. Would I be correct to say that as we look at police and fire options, we believe that the best option for our citizens, and by best, we mean timely, professional, well-equipped fire and EMS service, is best secured under the current structure. The other options, while perhaps there are other options out there, but frankly, they have serious liabilities when analyzed carefully. The question is, we believe that the best structure for our constituents is what we have now, structured as it is. Is that fair?
Yes, that is very fair, but you're also telling me that I talk too much, so I'm going to talk.
Well,
too
I
much.
just,
So,
I didn't want to.
no,
I didn't want to.
listen,
I didn't want to.
I believe
at you.
what I'm trying to do here, and whether that continues after I'm gone or not, is trying to bring this basic precept to everything that we do. The more control over cost and quality that we have, the better the outcome. And this scenario that we're asking for gives us the most control over the cost and the quality of the services. Once we start down the other roads, privatizing, joint districts, outsourcing, we lose control over quality and cost.
Thank you. So basically what we're going to do is, I told a constituent today, we've evaluated the options. We believe that this is the best recommendation for our community. This is why we believe it should be funded. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to just make one more point. This is Stroya. Getting into the nuts and bolts of things, I'd like to call attention just to the service calls that have been made over the past several years, and look at the increases that we're getting. The EMS, I worry about vehicles, the cost of vehicles. I don't know how much a fire truck costs. I've heard the buzzword of around $1 million. The way that the fire, oh, go ahead.
Matt, hook and ladder is going to be $1 million. A standard traditional fire truck's about $500,000.
Wow. And the EMS, do you have an estimate on the ambulances? I mean,
375.
Wow. So if you look at some of the age of some of the vehicles we have, and you look at the upkeep of what they've done and made these last, it's impressive. But there's going to be a time where we're going to have to replace some of these things. So I ask people listening to consider that very strongly.
Good point, Matt.
I think, hold on, if you just go back just a second, Ben, to the personnel. That's the slide I referenced in responding to Mark's excellent question about cost control. Look at that, 2011, 38 people. 2014, 38 people. We're down 13 in 2020. Trying to hold down full-time the number of full-time employees.
Yeah, that's a great slide.
Hey, Daryl, the problem always is that we're losing employees, but the costs keep going up. That's what I think we're having a hard time swallowing, is the reality that costs are up.
Yeah, but if you look at health insurance, there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, we've done a little bit.
Well, we've tried, but I mean, the health insurance does go up.
As a refresher, let's keep in mind that with the last negotiation between the 3 collective bargaining units in the police department, we were able to have a very constructive dialogue and a change to the contract that will allow the city, for the first time ever, to obtain quotes on insurance that is not stipulated in the collective bargaining agreements. In other words, we can get changes. We can get an HSA plan, a higher deductible, different co-pays. All this stuff was scripted into the collective bargaining agreements decades ago.
Right.
And so where we're at is, yes, there'll be a health insurance committee made up of management and labor that will then, review these quotes, because ultimately we know that in our collective bargaining discussions with the health insurance, escalating so rapidly, that if health insurance costs continue to climb at 10+% a year, the next time we go through collective bargaining, we know that the formula won't work anymore. We've already had that frank discussion. We're not going to be able to do, those kind of wage adjustments to make up for the cost of health insurance going up like that. It's unworkable. That's when you end up talking about other ways to provide services, because we can't make the health insurance equation work anymore. So this is a way, and our collective bargaining units recognize that we need to take a more proactive approach in trying to bring the cost of healthcare down.
That's a great point, Patrick.
Yeah.
And again, this is Daryl, that Patrick's comment illustrates two very critical things. Number one is the effort to try to, if we can't contain the cost, to slow its increase. And how do we get that? We get that by having a good relationship with our employees in the negotiation, through negotiation.
And an HSA, this is Dom, an HSA may be the way to go, is being self-employed for many, many years. I'm not saying it's the best option, but it's still a very good option. And it's a way to kind of cost share a little bit and, spread the risk factor around, because it's getting out of sight cost-wise that, we can't sustain that. And that's why we're having this conversation about raising more revenue.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so I would move that we move this to the agenda next week.
Revolt will second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Motion carries.
Okay, Part B on finance and property. We were just going to take a look at the compensation for elected officials of North Canton, and I'm going to pass it to Daryl and Ben.
Thank you, Stephanie. A number of months ago, this is Daryl, Stephanie asked me to review the levels of compensation for elected officials. Ben and I have been collecting data. Ben principally has been collecting data over the many months. And the issue that we want to address is a very, very narrow financial issue of modest financial impact. And that is this. Currently, 6 members of council do not participate in the public employees retirement system. As you'll note, our compensation, according to the slide, is $79.20. That rate of pay was established in 2017. It does not meet the OPERS minimum of 8218 and hasn't. So this means that any member of council serving who's starting his or her career in public life doesn't receive any credit for the years that they have served. So the question was, what do we do? So Ben, you want to roll up the next slide here? So we took a look at what it was like to be on council. And Ben, again, you're going to see a snapshot of the data that we've collected. But members of council are expected to be present at a meeting every Monday night for 2 years, with the exception of a period during the summer, a 5th Monday, certain holidays, etc. But it turns out, Ben, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've got something well in excess of 45 or 46 meetings a year. How many did we do last year? Do you recall?
So in 2020, we had 52 meeting occurrences and spent 51.35 hours in meetings.
Okay, so we had 50 meetings. The average of those meetings was an hour apiece. That's a considerable commitment, particularly with people who are working full time. Ben also took a look at the number of emails that flowed into council. You'll notice those. And then there are what I would consider both the policy and the constituent issues that arise from members of council. It may be simply calling the administration's attention to a curb and gutter issue, a drainage issue that requires follow-up, or it may be a larger policy issue that ultimately works its way to legislation. But we all know that we have not only the meeting, but if you add an hour to that meeting, everybody prepares for these meetings. So if you've got 50 hours, you may have 100 hours of actual work related to that meeting. And then, depending on what's going on and who's engaged in a particular issue, you'll notice that many of us spend more time than just an hour at a meeting. I think a lot of us do. So Ben, give me the next slide, would you please? So we took a look at North Canton's rate of pay, and we compared ourselves to other cities. And you'll see them right here. These are like communities as best we could. Our rate of pay at $7,900 is well below the average of $11,600. And the most similar cities to North Canton, the pay for council is $12,000. Ben broke it out to cost per resident. 46 cents here in North Canton, 91 cents elsewhere. Let's not forget township trustees. The average trustee is being paid $12,500. And typically, those trustees meet only once or twice a month and may receive health care. Roll it over, Ben. What I found fascinating was Ben went and adjusted the pay scale from 1980-81. 1981, 40 years ago, was when I went on council for the first time. That pay, if you were to average it out for those 40 years, adjust for inflation, has not increased in 40 years. Hasn't gone up. And in fact, during a significant portion of that time, council received health care as part of its compensation package, which it no longer does. So if you were to actually factor that in, there would be a sharper decline in the compensation package. Go ahead, Ben. So why should council, 6 members of council, be in PERS? I think the first is this, is that if you're going to attract quality candidates and you want people who are going to have their time and effort and intellect, you're going to have to pay them. 40 or 50 years ago, maybe civic duty, less so today. I think what we want to do is we want to encourage long-term community commitment and dedication on the city council. I know Ben's got a slide somewhere about the average years of service. We're really pretty fortunate that we have people who've been around and bring their expertise, whether it's in parks or economic development or finance, or frankly, sales for certain fundraising activities. That's a real asset in the community. I'm public service is a noble vocation. In 40 years of public service, I've seen a lot of office holders, officials, etc. And the best ones have one thing in common. They all started out at the local level and built careers in the public sector. I know we live in an age where that is denigrated, but the reality is that the best decisions, if they can be affected, are decisions that are informed by experience in government. We've got a couple of examples here. Reggie Stolfa started as a trustee. John Wise, Court of Appeals judge, started as the Plain Township clerk back in 1983. Scott Olslager, another example. The best one that we left off is a little-known congressman from Navarre, Ohio, who started his career as the solicitor in Navarre. Went on to state board of education, state rep, state senator, and ultimately the Congress. It's rare, but think about it a second. How fortunate we are, for example, to have our colleague Doug Fultz. Here's a guy who's built a career in parks. We've got him on our council. Think about the ability of someone who has worked not only in Kent, but in Springfield Township, who brings all of that experience to decisions that get made in our community. So, what I'm proposing is this. Next slide. What we'd like to do is raise the 6 members of council only, not the president, not the mayor. We'll leave that for another council. But in the next term, and I want to state this, Pat's talked about transparency. This could have been done after the filing deadline. We're doing it right up front to address this issue in a very modest way. I'm recommending the council raise its salary, raise the salary in the next term from $79.20 to $83.62. We're going to go from $660 per month to $696.84. So for every member on council, that'll be $442. That's it. The total cost for that 6 is a whopping $2,652.48. To bring those members into OPERS participation. And then what I'm suggesting, is that each year for the next 6 years, we could do it for an extended period, other communities do, but we'll go for 6 years, is to, after that, raise the 6 members of council, not the president, not the mayor, but to meet the OPERS minimum of 1.75% increase. And we'll do that for 6 years. The interim council can figure out where, future councils can figure out where they want to go in terms of overall compensation.
Hey, Daryl, it's Dom.
Yeah.
What's that a month per?
Well, it's gonna come out to about $36.
Okay.
The initial proposal.
So basically, it's a $36 a month raise.
Yeah.
To meet the minimum OPERS credit or whatever.
That is correct. And
okay.
For a total cost in year one of $442.08 for this, again, for the 6 members of council only, not the mayor, not the council president, We'll leave those compensation packages to be determined in the future. They're already in PERS now.
All right, Daryl, very eloquent and on your ask here, and this is an awkward discussion and very ironic too, because on the same conversation we're talking about increasing people to give us an increase in levy, and we're asking ourselves to give a raise. Okay, I get that, but this does make sense and it is reasonable, for the people to accept this for the future of our process. But have you considered starting this in 2024 rather than 2022? That skips. I mean, there's no real urgency to this that I can see.
Yeah, there is, Mark, and here's what it is. We know right now that 3 of us are going to be gone. If our goal is to encourage some bright young citizen to get involved, let's acknowledge that there should be a financial incentive to do it. And maybe that young person will be the next member of Congress in 30 years. But they got started here. They got that experience. They learned about government. They learned how to make toilets flush. They learned how to work with other people to make things happen. That's the thing we want to encourage, Mark. Right. And again, I can shove it down the road. You guys can do that. But let's acknowledge that you're going to have 3 new members of council. They don't get a say in this. Let's put them in. And candidly, after they're elected, if they don't want to do it, bring it up and take themselves out. You can always cut the wages in the next term. I mean, they'll be stuck with the wages they've got in 22, 23, but they can cut them for 24 and take them to 0. I guess my point, Mark, is this, is that I think if we want good people, we've got to understand there has to be some financial incentive.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think anybody here looked at the compensation when they put their hand up for being a council.
I'll be honest with you, sometimes I can't even tell you off the top of my head what it is.
Let me finish here then. And I see this is probably something for the Charter Commission should do, not necessarily us. That should have been done already, and we probably missed the boat on that the last time the Charter Commission went through. That's somebody completely different, and we need to make sure that we put that out there the next time this comes through. But by going 2 years ahead, I mean you're clashing here now with some things about you're going to pay the council more, and then you want more money from the levies, and I just don't think it's a good ask right now, to be honest.
Well, Mark,
I don't think it means that much, the difference.
Let me respond to you this way. I'm going to bet you that we spent $2,600 on Christmas decorations. I'd spend $2,600 to make sure that I got a couple Cracker Jack new councilmen, because they're going to have a greater impact on the city.
Hey, Daryl, it's Dom. I think for $36 a month, and I've been doing this will be, I think by the time I finish up, 7 years and 4 months. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye. And I mean, I'm not doing it for the money, but I can understand, to attract some decent talent, the minimum OPERS. I mean, you don't get health care or anything. We don't take health care. I mean, it's a minimal amount for what really the council members do. And I know when you're sitting in the arena like we are, we get to see a little bit different perspective than sitting in the rearview mirror or looking from the back seat. So I believe, even though it won't benefit probably any of us because we're going to be gone anyhow, but I think for the future, I think that's a reasonable request. And so I agree with that.
Dom, let me just come back. I want to say something to Mark. Mark, I am sensitive to this. I don't think there's any good time to evaluate the wages of, I've never, in 40 years in public life, I've never been through a cycle where anybody liked to pay public employees, whether they're elected or staff. They just don't. It's just the reality. Our charter says to us, we have the authority to raise our wages. So the
Hey,
purpose
Mark,
of this
we're not like-
conversation tonight was
Hey,
to
Daryl.
finish this.
We're not
Hey,
like
Daryl.
Congress. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Stephanie,
Hey,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
it's Stephanie. I mean, yeah, I agree with Mark. The timing may not be perfect, and like you said, it's never fun to talk about. But the reality is, for some reason, the state government does do townships, and like you said, those average $12,000, and they meet once a month, and they get health care. I don't know why the state does those and they don't do the city. So that leaves it for us to try to figure it out. And you did try to look at that, and you looked at comparable cities to say, well, what else are other people doing? And we still aren't doing what other people are doing. So I still think it's a really good deal. And the other thing is, it's not even just about going into maybe a governmental job. I mean, I look at all the people that work in the courthouses and in the county building. If they started here and then they wanted to move to that, they still have those years. And so when you
That's
say,
correct.
Mark, when you say, hey, what's 2 years? Well, that's retirement for people. That's 2 years later that someone wouldn't maybe retire if they did 30 years. Down at the courthouse and down at those municipal buildings, and Doug knows this, people stay forever because of OPERS. That's the reason that they're there. That's why people stay in the little clerk booth or do what they need to. And they start when they're 21 and 22. And whether or not people like it, and they don't like that people retire when they're 50, they are. And it's because of the retirement system. So it's not just about moving us. I mean, honestly, the likelihood of, we're all too old. The likelihood of us getting anything it's not what it's about. I'm looking for the new people that come in, and to say, hey, if you started in this and you're younger, maybe we have someone in their 20s or 30s, great, start here and then move into one of our other county offices or the buildings. But that's where it would really help them a lot. And that's where the 2 years, it does matter.
Yeah, Stephanie, it's Councilman Fultz. Yeah, I concur. I think when you look at, and Daryl, you build in a 1.75% annual increase. The problem we've always gotten in this city, whether it's water rates, inflation rates, we never keep up with it. And when you take that off the table and say, okay, it's 6 years and listen, that's fair and reasonable. We give raises higher than that, as we know, and it's justified with our employees, and we're not asking for that. I mean, it's a part-time position, but I remember when some council members, I wasn't one of them, but some relied on the health care as part of the council package, and that got voted down by our constituents. Fair enough. That's fine. So I think at the very least, we could keep up with the OPRS rate increases. We're not paying everybody another $12,000 to $15,000 a year for health insurance to use. So I think that has to enter into the argument or the discussion points. I think it's very fair to put it out now and vote on it before the election. I think it lets people know it's a minimal increase, that you get a highly efficient government that we have here in North Canton. We have probably the lowest rate of elected official costs than anybody. So I just think you have to look at it that way. And Daryl, you did a great job with the presentation. So I fully support this.
Thanks, Doug. Again, coming back, the assignment was this: how do we bring the new members in to OPERS? And what I'm proposing is the minimum. There's no extravagance here. It is the bare minimum to get them into the threshold, over the threshold. That's it.
Yep. I agree, Daryl. This is Peters here. And you did. I mean, you addressed it on the 6 council members that aren't there. Council president and the mayor are already there. You didn't address that. I agree with that. I think this is a modest ask, and I agree. So I support it.
Well,
36
Chairman
bucks a
Warren,
month.
I'm going to surrender the mic to you.
Okay. Well, I think that we should move it out of committee, and then we'll ask to put it on the agenda next week.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Fultz seconds.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thanks, Steph. Moving on, ordinance rules. Chairman Stroya, last but not
All
least,
right.
floor is yours.
Yes. So this is what we briefly discussed in last committee of the whole to develop a billing disputes board. In this, it would give the director of administration, the deputy director, and the director of finance and the director of law the power to settle water disputes and water billing disputes. So it's pretty clear. Are there any questions or comments about this?
If I may add on.
Sure.
So what this would do is it would take our existing water board, which has the power to arbitrate billing disputes that can't be resolved by our normal processes, and it takes the ambulance board, which has the same power for EMS billing, and consolidates them into one billing disputes board. In doing this, we believe that still, 98-99% of disputes will be resolved, through our normal review processes before we ever get to this point.
Thanks, Ben. Any questions or comments on this?
No, this is Retta. I think it's a good idea. I've sat on the water board, and we've had to make some tough decisions for citizens. And it'd be nice to have a nonpartisan, non-elected kind of a board that can make these decisions, based on the cities. I agree with this. I think it's a good thing.
Me too.
Thanks, Mark. Good point. Anybody else?
No, I support it.
Let's move it forward.
I motion to move this out of committee.
All right, Foltz seconds.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. And folks, that concludes our agenda for this evening. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Foltz moves.
Retta seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.